Welcome back to China Now. This week, Thinkers Forum welcomes Richard D. Wolff, Marxian economist and founder of Democracy at Work, and the highlights of the Thinkers Forum 2024. Let's see.
It is an ideological game for the people who get the profits to convince the people who do the work that the most important thing is the profit. That's a swindle. That's childish. That should be understood for the ideological self-serving of the people at the top. I think the genius of Marx was to say the same logic can and should apply to the organization of the workplace. It doesn't need a king. It doesn't need a CEO. It doesn't need an emperor at the top. It doesn't need him to be there. It doesn't need him to become a billionaire. I've been a professor of economics at the university all my life. What China has achieved in the last 30 to 40 years, the transformation from one of the poorest countries on this planet to an economic powerhouse, is extraordinary. The argument that there is something unfair about competition between the state and private enterprise is a very strange criticism, because in Britain and the United States, and indeed wherever you have private enterprise, you have terribly unfair competition between large corporations and small ones. The history of every capitalist country, including the United States, past and present, is a bitter, and I underscore that for you, a bitter struggle and conflict between large corporate enterprise and small ones. The small ones are always explaining how they are unfairly treated by big business. It is a theme. It has been a core part of the politics of every capitalist country. In fact, if you study the actual history of capitalist countries in Western Europe and North America, you will know that the small businesses have often mobilized to control the government in order to have the government reduce the unfair treatment they get from big businesses. For example, in France, the working class, the labor unions, have organized with small business. The left wing in French politics, which did very well last Sunday, got 28% of the vote. That's an alliance between workers and medium and small businesses. They oppose the right wing of Macron because he is the leader of big business. And now I put on my hat as a Marxist. I would argue that one of the great lessons of Karl Marx, I would argue that what the future of Marxism and socialism are about is a transformation, a change in the organization of the workplace, the factory, the office, the store, whether it is owned and operated by private individuals or it's owned and operated by the government. In both cases, the Marxist argument is we do not need and we do not want a small group of people at the top of this workplace making all the decisions, being in a position to hire or fire all of us who are employees, telling us what to do, how to do it, when to do it, deciding how well we do it, That is not democratic, and that is not necessary. And that human communities used to think they needed to have a king or an emperor or a czar who made all the political decisions. I think the genius of Marx was to say the same logic can and should apply to the organization of the workplace. It doesn't need a king. It doesn't need a CEO. It doesn't need an emperor at the top. It doesn't need him to be there. It doesn't need him to become a billionaire. If you look at the dispersion of billionaires in the world, the two countries with the most billionaires are the United States and China. If we make the power in the people, in the workplace, at the bottom of society, that the factory be run democratically, one person, one vote, the same for the office, the same for the store, that we give people the power over their own work and labor, that's the breakthrough. It's the democratization of work. That's why we call our organization, democracy at work. And we think it's the best way for the United States to cope with the relocation of capitalism away. The idea that profit is the key is a misunderstanding. And let me assure you, as an economist again, corporations in the West that have maximized profit have not done as well in the long run as corporations who didn't. I can see it over and over again. In the United States, one of the great heroes, Elon Musk, the head of Tesla, so he is a cultural hero, Mr. Musk. Okay, now what kind of a person is he? He has more children than he can remember, with as many different women as he has had relationships with. He was devoted to making a killing with his car. But Tesla is now in trouble because, for example, BYD in China produces a better electric car than Tesla can do. And that is changing the whole business. The key issue is, how are you shaping your whole economy? Look, every capitalist corporation eventually disappears. They all maximize their profit. General Motors and Ford maximize their profit, but they're disappearing as automobile companies. That was not their success. It didn't do that. So it's a little bit of an ideological trap. When you maximize your profit, you typically economize on other expenditures. And you do not know whether that is the right thing to do or not. I'll give you an example. Imagine a corporation that lowered its profits in order to provide really first-class child care to its workers, so that every worker could bring his or her children to work because they would be well-fed, well-clothed, have lots of learning activities, and be happy together with other children. Okay? They would hurt their profit, but they would do something spectacular for their workers. Okay. Now, 2 years later or 5 years later, a crisis happens in the world market. Somebody else produces a better whatever it is this company did. And now the company turns to its workers and it says, we need your help to survive this crisis. You know what? They're going to get much more help from people whose children have been taken well care of. They will realize later that it was a mistake to have maximized profit at the expense of your larger situation. For every company that you show me that has done well because it maximized profit, I will show you one that fell apart because it maximized profit. It is pro-capitalist ideology to think that maximizing profit is some sort of guaranteed arrival at the best situation. That was never true. And let me get it for you in a slightly different way. If you think about a capitalist corporation, any corporation, the revenue this company gets, it divides into different parts. Part of the revenue replaces the tools and equipment used up in production. Another part of the revenue pays the wages of the workers. And another part of the revenue goes to the investors and to the top executives as profits. All of those people participate in making that corporation successful. You therefore should maximize what you pay your suppliers, you should maximize what you pay your workers, the wages, and you should maximize profits. Why only one? All of them are needed. It is an ideological game for the people who get the profits to convince the people who do the work that the most important thing is the profit. That's a swindle. That's childish. That should be understood for the ideological self-serving of the people at the top. That's why we are required in universities to teach business school graduates the importance of maximizing profit. It's no different than telling you the important thing that makes your business successful is if you go to the church and you talk to Jesus about your business. People used to do that, and they used to think that speaking with Jesus was the route to success. Well, maximizing profit is just another variation on talking to Jesus. It's not the guarantee of anything. What it does do is make everything else less important than the people at the top. And that's what they want you to think. But don't be fooled.
We're starting our Thinkers Forum 24, Civilization State in Multiple and Multipolar Perspectives.
Civilizational State and the liberal world order, are they bound to collide with each other?
I find in Chinese the saying, 重要我，我重要你.
South Africa is going through its own transition, it's going through typical challenges that 30-year-olds go through.
They're looking to Russia for peace, for prosperity, for new world order.
Good morning, dear colleagues, guests, friends. We're starting our Thinkers Forum 24, Civilization State in Multiple and Multipolar Perspectives. So we all know there are serious changes occurring in the world system, and there are a lot of different concepts shared by all of us who are representing the most important countries of BRICS. So the main question that stands among us is the definition of a civilization state and the proper understanding of this concept. Does it really exist? What are its criteria and special features? How does this concept fit into the diverse context of the emerging multipolar world, etc. So a lot of our colleagues are involved in deep debates about this new concept, which fits actually in the understanding, general understanding of the world system and its evolution.
It's indeed a great pleasure that we host for the first time the Thinkers Forum, together with our brotherly partners, the Oriental Institute, Russian Academy of Sciences, on the occasion of 75th anniversary of Sino-Russian diplomatic relations, and this particular Sino-Russian Year of Culture, and also this particular year of BRICS Summit to be held in Russia. So this is indeed fascinating in many ways. As we are aware, this discourse on civilizational state has now become the mainstream discussions worldwide. I remember British writer Aris Rusinus said, "Spectre," he coined the phrase together like the Communist Manifesto, the spectre of a spectre is haunting the liberal West, the rise of the civilizational state. And not long ago, the American academic American journal National Interest also published a forthright article. It's called the Allure for the Civilizational State, Attractiveness of Civilizational State. And the subtitle is Civilizational State and the Liberal World Order. Are they bound to collide with each other? I think with the world increasingly multipolar, we are witnessing the rise of civilizational states and civilizational discourse around the world, especially across the Eurasian continent from China to Russia, to India, to Iran, to Turkey, and even to ASEAN countries, which represents 75% of the global population and 60% of the world GDP. I think it's only natural that leading scholars from China, Russia, and BRICS, and more gather to discuss this hugely important topic. The very theme, civilizational state in multiple and multiple perspectives, it involves three concepts. One is civilized state, as just now Professor Nomkin mentioned in our program, but this concept will discuss its relation with multipolarity and more. And multiple perspective, which means, say, theoretical, academic, policy-oriented perspectives, and Chinese perspective, Russian perspective, Indian perspective, more. And multipolar perspective, which means we put the whole topic in the context of fast-changing world order from unipolarity to multipolarity. So that's how we have designed together with our Oriental Institute on the scene of the forum. And I said many times, if the United States is known for its deep state, which has done so much harm to American people per se, and to the world at large, it's therefore important for leading scholars from this country to get together. And I said the United States is known for deep state, but civilization states are known for their deep peoples and deep cultures. And it is particularly true for the Eurasian continent. And they all have their time-honored traditions for their own way of life, for organizing family and social life, for individual collective relationship, for state-societal relations, and for world peace and prosperity. So it's this kind of deep-rooted civilization roots that are driving the rapid rise of a more humane, better governed, and more just world order to replace this outdated and unjust, immoral unipolarity. So with this slightly optimistic note, I wish the forum a great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. Now, I would like to introduce to you Professor Binod Singh from India.
Thank you, Mr. President Nomkin, and thanks to our Chinese organizers from Fudan University. It's an honor to attend this very first forum in Moscow. This noon I'm going to speak on why a country like India should go back to the original thought of foundation of New India, that is the thought of Mr. Gandhi and Mr. Nehru. When we're talking about civilization states here, first of all, in India, we have a consensus that Moscow is the place where we're looking for new ideas. 1917 is in the deep memory of every Indian scholar, professor, especially the university where I come from. It's called Indian University. So all of my colleagues and my seniors and my professors, they have been students of Soviet Union. They may not have been here, but they have been deeply influenced by Soviet political thinking. India is known for philosophers. If you want to make money, they say you go to USA. If you want to see wealth, you go to China. If you want to see the nature's beauty, you come to Russia. But if you want to see philosophers, you go to India. It is true. India, although we speak English, and our education system is deeply influenced by the Western system. But if you have an Indian friend, his soul is still Indian. Doesn't matter, he lives in Silicon Valley or he lives in Shanghai or in Moscow. This is something amazing about India. But we always say in India that India is not a country. India is an idea. So when we open the BBC and CNN, what's happening in genocide in Gaza and in Israel, we really thought of Mr. Gandhi, who was one of the first to talk about two independent states, especially Palestine. But you know, in a democracy, when a leader is very strong, the current dispensation in India is not very vocal to support the way China is supporting the rights of Palestinians. So this is something was very clear in the election result. He lost it. The state of UP, the Uttar Pradesh, the largest state, is full of Muslim population. They just said no. And I hope our leadership gets the message very clearly. We cannot stand with any deep state or state terrorism. I'm not sure this is the time to go for the depth. I really want to appreciate the stand of China, the stand of Russia. Yesterday evening, I had a long walk at the Red Square, Kremlin. The maximum number of people were from Aleppo, Arab states. This is the first time I see Africans and the Muslim population, they're looking to Russia for peace, for prosperity, for new world order. They're totally disgruntled and disappointed with the so-called double standards of the United States and the West. So in India, I'm not sure I present the diplomatic or the official version of Indian foreign policy, because now they're saying this again, like they stand both sides, something like non-aligned, you know. But the youth of India really thinks that we should have a clear stand that if American hegemonism is in decline, we should choose our side. We should work together, especially with China. I talk to many young people and they choose to learn Chinese language and go and work in China. They see the future in China. For the Russia, they say no need to talk. It's the oldest friend. No need to even speak about Russia. We are just one. There's no differences between Indian and Russian foreign policy. When it comes to China, where the Chinese philosophy of Chairman Mao Zedong starts with the power comes from the barrel of the gun, but the Gandhian philosophy is very opposite. So at times we see that we are antagonistic, but in reality, if you go to the history of Chinese culture and Indian culture, I find in Chinese they say "Ni chung yo wo, wo chung yo ni." I see everywhere the Chinese philosophy and Indian philosophy, a shared philosophy in Asia. And again, the Indian philosophy with the Arabic Islamic philosophy is so mixed that when my friends go to India and they ask for Indian sari, Indian dress, Indian sweets, so impacted by Turkey, Mongols, and different cultures that I really cannot make a distinction between what is Indian and what is Arabic. So I look forward for the detailed discussion today about what kind of civilization state China is putting on the table. Can we share it, or is it going to be again the way Americans say American way? Now you say Chinese way. So we have to be different from Americans, then only we have more followers.
Thank you very much. Finally, we have another guest, esteemed guest and friend from South Africa, Dr. Busani Ndiaweni.
Good morning to all the friends here in Moscow and from India. I hope I will share the perspective from South Africa later today to see how South Africa sees the world as it evolves today, and how the civilizational state is evolving as a counter-hegemon to what we have seen over the last couple of decades. South Africa is going through its own transition. Now it's 30 years old, and therefore, like all other 30-year-olds, it has lost some innocence, It can now be treated as an adult. It's going through typical challenges that 30-year-olds go through. If you think of our own countries when they were 30, more or less similar transitions that to occur at various proportions. And I hope to share that perspective. And thank you for convening this dialogue, because this conversation ought to proceed, given where the world is today and some of the challenges that many countries in the global south are going through. Some are criticizing the idea of having India, well as more China and Russia, in a conversation about the global south, because in the global north, a concept is emerging that there is actually a global east, and they are calling China a global east. So you remove it from the global south, and then they are trying to find another characterization geographic that is for Russia as a global northeast, so that it also stands on its own and is not part of the global south. So hopefully through this conversation we can find some convergence and address some of the counters that we see emerging from the global north. Thank you.
And this was another episode of China Now, a show that opens a window to the present and future of the Asian giant. Hope you enjoyed it. See you next time.